today with us is Miss Kanika Sehgal. Welcome, Miss Sehgal, and today she'll be talking about digital film compositing. So at the outset, I just wanted to know if you can just elaborate a bit of what digital film compositing is.
Okay, so now digital film compositing is basically a technique, an art where you composite different things out of a film which you've just shot. Live action movies are those movies which you use a camera and you're standing and actors are performing in front of it and you shoot them, and afterwards once you shoot them you composite them in front of some other background or some other area which is not there, might not be in actual terms or might be there, but they have not shot or shoot it over that particular location. So that is the kind of film compositing which we deal with in digital film compositing. Herein we involve lot of processes where we have something like we have Chroma screens, we do particular advanced techniques through which digital compositing has been becoming very easy and very fruitful for us. And
if you can just elaborate, as you were saying, there are a few steps that is involved. If you can just elaborate what all steps, or you can just brief about it.
Yeah, fine, I'll be sharing doing it. As in, we have seen a lot of visual effects movies, which we call in, as in for the digital film compositing, we deal with visual effects movies.
Right.
And for those visual effects movies, we have particular kind of techniques and advanced chroma screens and maskings and compositing which we deal with. So first of all, I'll be explaining you about masking and keying. That is the first step which is involved while we are doing compositing. Okay. So now the second one is, first, for example, you might have seen a Superman.
Right.
Now what do you think? Superman has superpowers or is born with some special powers that he'll be flying with? But actually it's not like that. Okay, we do it manually by some techniques. So for that we need like superhuman powers and not belonging to that character. But we do it in the softwares, okay, by certain advanced techniques. Now for example, if we just have a look at what images I've got. So
yeah.
Now you can see in these images that Superman is actually flying out. So if we particularly think for the kids and for normal human beings, we think that Superman has powers, might be he's been born with such special powers that he can fly, he can do special stuff which we humans can't. But actually it's been done through film compositing. Now Superman is just a normal human being, he's an actor. And when he flies, we shoot him on a green screen, or maybe we shoot him in some particular kind of environment which is in a studio. Might be an open studio, might be a closed studio where we shoot him. And then afterwards, we just composite him, we just extract him out of that background and we impose him in front of whatever kind of environment which we find suitable accordingly to the requirement of our scene and the movie. That is the way we do the film compositing. So for such kind of detailing and for such kind of techniques, what we do actually is, we shoot him in front of a background, a green screen, and then we take out that green screen, composite him in front of that particular matte paint or a background which we have shot somewhere else, and then we fix them together. So that is the kind of film compositing we are going to deal with today, and we are going to learn certain procedures and the procedure how we do it actually.
Alright.
So the next thing is like, what is compositing basically? Compositing is utilizing multiple images together. Okay, now multiple images can be like minimum they can be 2 or 3 images. They can be more than 2 also, they can be 15, 20, there is no limitation. But combining those multiple images together and pasting them together so that they look as if they are one, that is known as compositing. Now when you ask about, typically if a background is placed, and a foreground is being accompanying along with him, so background and foreground together, when they are color corrected, they seem to be one. That is we call in as a composited image. Now compositing images can be used in special effects movies also. They can be used in CG films also. They are used in making posters, graphics, designs. You might be looking at certain printouts. You might be looking at something, advertisements, brochures, standees, everywhere. The actors are generally posing in front of green screen or in front of a mat or in front of some other background in a studio, which is might be a closed room.
Sorry to interrupt. Is there any difference between matte or if we say chroma?
That I'll be elaborating later on, as in we just proceed. So again, compiling them together and pasting them with a particular kind of a background. For example, we two are sitting here, and if I wish to see us in some other kind of a background. For example, I want to see us in an underwater scene.
Okay.
Then we can probably have it if we do masking or we follow the procedure of compositing. That can be done. Now for that we might be seeing visual effects, or we might be seeing compositing in special effect movies, or we can see combining CG and film. Now what is CG? CG is computer graphics. Now computer graphics is something which you've been learning, or which we can learn it in film compositing. Film compositing comprises of a lot of stuff. We can do a lot of 3D, we can do a lot of visual effects, and we can do a lot of compilation of 3D and visual effects both. For example, if we shoot something with the camera and we compile it with some CG. CG is computer generated graphics. Now computer generated graphics can be a character which has been done in 3D softwares and has to be managed along with that live action character which we have shot, and afterwards combining them together and then forming the movie out of it. For example, you might have seen Lord of the Rings, where you have Goblin as the character, and you might have seen Harry Potter, where you have lot of characters which are out of fantasy realms. They don't belong to the realistic life. So those kind of characters, filming them accordingly with us human beings who have been shot with the camera. That is known as compositing, or combining CG and films together. Again, compositing can be utilized as for photo retouching. Now what is photo retouching? Photo retouching means, for example, we are just looking at some poster or some advertisement. So what happens is, like Shah Rukh Khan has been posing for Tag Heuer. Now Tag Heuer is a brand of a watch, for example, and then Shah Rukh Khan might not be actually standing in the background where you have a lot of graphics moving around in the background. So what we do is, we shoot Shah Rukh Khan in some studio with some particular kind of setup, and then we extract that background out, and then we incorporate Shah Rukh Khan along with those graphics which are generated again in separate softwares. Softwares like Ion Fusion, softwares like After Effects, Photoshop, okay, and all of them are then compiled up together. Now that means photo retouching can also be used as in for example, we do wire removal shots where the actors like Akshay Kumar and various action heroes perform stunts where they have been wearing wires and cables attached to them when they are jumping. So those wires have to be removed. That is again accompanying us in photo retouching. The photo retouching also involves changing the background. Might be again the same kind of situation arises that later on, when once you shot the movie, we feel that there is a need or a desire, we want to change the background. So for that purpose we can do photo retouching. Fake depth of field. Now depth of field means, for example, we are in an environment where we have a distance which has a long shot and we have lot of area to be covered. For the background we need it to be blurred out. So for that purpose also you can do manual compositing. Page layouts, extracting objects, making magazine covers, print, and lot of stuff which is again hoardings, brochures and all, where you have graphics and along with that aapke paas characters, you have actors who've been performing, and you just blend them together and you merge them. That is again we cover it up in photo retouching. Okay. So this is all basically compositing is being made up of.
Alright.
Then again masking, for example, if we move on to masking. So masking is again a very important procedure as for compositing, basically for film compositing. So masking basically is a process through which what we do is we hide off something which is unwanted and undesirous. For example, people put up mask on their faces to hide off their identity. Similar kind of procedure we call in as masking, because masking is something which is going to help us out. Once we do masking, we can hide off something which we don't want to see. Okay, so once we've shooted, like for example, we've been shooting a movie and there is a wire or maybe there's an extra piece of cloth which has been hanging somewhere in the shooting, and now we can't again go and shoot it back because it is a lot of expensive project. Right. And again, when you're doing shooting, then a lot of procedures are there. Again, cost has to be taken care of. Producer is not going to spend so much of money. For that, again, masking can be very fruitful because it can take that unnecessary element out of that scene and you can incorporate something new in it. Apart from that, so masking is basically a process, as in we whole cover it up. It is used to hide off something which is unrequired and not utilized anywhere. That is we call it masking.
And what softwares are we using for this?
Masking basically can be done in a lot of softwares. For example, you can use, firstly it starts with the first basic software, that is Adobe Photoshop.
Okay.
Second one is your Adobe After Effects. You can do masking in Adobe Premiere also, FCP, Apple FCP also, and you can do it in Ion Fusion. There are various softwares available in market which deal with masking as in a process, which is very, very helpful again as for film compositing. But the main softwares which are going to cover in our course, in our semesters, first semester, that is digital filmmaking, are basically Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Premiere Pro, and Adobe After Effects. Masking again helps you not only in removing something or extracting something, it also helps you to remove it and to compile it and composite it with 2 or 3 more images together. For example, we want somebody to, we have a spaceship. Okay, now if we have this spaceship which is in the foreground, and I want this should be accompanied into a background which has been again has been made by a student or might be by anybody working in a studio. That can be a matte painting, which is actually not there. Might be we have taken some shots from some satellite views, and then we have incorporated a spaceship which has been made in 3D. Now that 3D spaceship has to go inside that matte painting or that background. When we extract the spaceship out of that background and we fix it up in the foreground of that image, we find final result. Okay. Now foreground and background together, when they are going to be blended together, as if they are together in a complete scene. That is we call it as a composited image. Again, you can easily see in here in these images. You have the foreground, there you have the spaceship. You have the background which is again empty without the spaceship.
Right.
When we composite them together, then you see the final result, along with you do some color correction, and again more techniques are involved to make it look more realistic and much better, which you find is actually there. We think actually might be that spaceship is there in that environment itself. This is the power which masking can have, and you can control it. Now what is the procedure for masking? Procedure is like that, like I've been already telling you that it can be done in various compositing softwares. These softwares have been made so capable and so compatible, as in for the video footages that we shoot with the camera, so that they can import them very easily. And again, you can do a lot of masking and image correction and photo retouching and compilation in any of these softwares, which is very easy to do, which is very easy to handle and looks very nice. Because Adobe Photoshop is the primary software which we start with in the first semester. It is holding a lot of value when you're doing masking. Now masking involves, like we have various procedures like layer masking, quick masking, they all are there which we use them in Photoshop. Afterwards we move on to Adobe After Effects. Adobe After Effects is again a software because Photoshop has a notion that it can only do masking in particular frame. A single frame, that means in one single image. After Effects is much better in that because it can handle videos, and videos again we might need them for film compositing. Again, Ion Fusion is a better software other than Adobe After Effects also, because Ion Fusion is node based and it has much more potential of carrying heavy footages. Apple Shake is again provided by Apple, that is again the main division from which the Adobe also belongs. Apple Shake is again a good compositing software, but it is node based. Now it involves basically a process when we are doing masking, that it involves a process that it derives an image which is black and white. Okay? That black and white image is particularly very important, and what you can do with that image is wonderful. That image is called as matte. Now,
well, sorry to interrupt. You were talking about something about node based. So if you can just tell a bit about
node based, and see there are two kind of packages available in the industry when you're doing compositing. One is your layer based, the other one is the node based softwares. Layer based softwares are those softwares where you have the hierarchy level as per that you have a background and you have a foreground, and node based जो compositing softwares हैं, there you don't have a particular aspect that you need to put a background or a foreground. As in to elaborate more, layer based softwares are those kind of softwares. For example, you can follow example of air. Air has again a lot of layers present in it, and similarly for example, you can also take a sandwich. The sandwich also has a lot of layers. First of all, you put slices together and you find it together as an appealing one. Okay. Similarly, layers again will happen, like you have a background, then you have a foreground, and it follows upon.
Alright.
Node-based softwares are similar kind of softwares, but they don't deal with hierarchy by placing them one on top of each other.
Okay.
They basically work upon single aspect, that whatever is connected to them, they'll follow that particular rule. And if the connection goes wrong anywhere, then you might be suffering because of that.
Okay.
So they again both are good softwares. Node-based and your layer-based softwares are good ones, but again it is your dependency on your studios again choices that what kind of software you are going to deal with. Okay, now what we were talking about matte, as in for the whole, because matte is basically very important and a vital element which is used for masking, because it involves a process through which we extract an image which is generally in two colors. One is black, the other one is white. And as for that process, we derive that image in black and white colors and we call it as a matte. This matte contains the coverage information of the black area and the white area. Now black area is generally known as the transparent one, and the white area is the color which holds the whole opaque elements. White and black are two colors which get formed when we are doing the matte. For example, if we can see that I have a character which has been shot separately, and I have a face of another character which have been shot separately. Now what I can do is, I can take the head from this image number 2 and place it in image number 1, and then we can see the final result in the image number 3. They have been done through similar procedures, that it can be a video also, it can be a still image also. If it's a still image, it can be done in Adobe Photoshop very easily, very quickly. Then if you have a video out of it, you follow it in After Effects, because again it's a good software for doing video film compositing, okay, because it can manage videos easily. Photoshop can only manage one single frame. Now how do we carry it along? We can shoot somebody who's been, as in you can see in image number 1, the character is playing table tennis and he has a particular kind of tilted head. Second number image, which can be seen in the slide, has a character who has his face facing towards his right hand side. So what we did in the compositing software is, we extracted the image number 2, the head from image number 2, and pasted it in image number 1, and then fitted it around correctly so that it looks as if the image is single. Now this is what we call in as image compositing. Now you can change a complete head or a complete portion or any body part or any structure element. Might be we want to change something in the background also. We can replace the table tennis bat with the baseball bat also, or maybe with the badminton racket. That is the power of compositing which actually it holds. Okay. Similar kind of things you can deal with, like for example, we have been shooting for movies. I've been making movies where we do a lot of shooting, and then what we do is, we fix it up, we change the background, and then we implement something new. That is, we call it as a matte paint. Might be we want to, for example, there was a very popular song of Prabhu where he was dancing and he didn't have any body parts. There were only clothes on his body. Now how is it possible that any person who is acting, who is dancing, but you can't see his head, we can't see his hands, or else other body parts. Now what happened actually was, we made him wear a particular kind of costume which can be removed, okay, by compositing only, and then you can see only that color which remains in the foreground. It can be implemented, and then you stuck it up in some other kind of background, and finally you find a complete scene. That is how, and the similar kinds of procedure you saw it in the particular slide also earlier. And again, photo editing, again as if we are talking about compositing only through mattes, photo editing again can be helpful while we are doing live action shooting. Live action shooting is very fruitful. Then we can have our background replaced. Live action shot can be anything. For example, you can see the slide where you can see a character who has been there with two ladies, and there is another image of the same character wherein again he is there with those two ladies, but the background you can see a slight difference. The background is quite hazy in the image number 2 because the effects have been added in the background. So that such kind of effects can be easily added through masking only. That process which we were talking about earlier, the masking process is very vital. The thing which was actually not there can be brought about or can be accompanied in that particular file. What is a matte? Okay, now matte is something which we had been talking about that it can be extracted from a video footage. Now it's a monochromatic image. It is a raster image first of all. Now what is a raster image? That might be again coming into your mind. Raster image is an image which is based on pixels. It is formed as in we have a lot of images which are placed in rows and columns, and it has a particular kind of resolution. That resolution can be higher or lower. That again depends on your camera, what kind of camera or what kind of setup you are using. That monochromatic raster image which we derived out of our film, whatever has been shot from the camera, out of that camera we derived that image, and that image has some kind of pixel values. That pixel values are basically holding color properties. Those colors are R, G and B. But again, when we are talking about matte, in this particular kind of raster image, we don't have any color values. We just have two color information which has alpha properties. One is alpha, which holds the value of either 0 or 1. Now where did it actually come from? If you can understand the binary language of computer, it has only two kind of values. The binary language which the computer understand, the bit based language, it has only two values, either 0 or 1. Now 0 means no for the computer and 1 means yes for the computer. And as for that, for Photoshop or for any compositing software, when we are talking about a matte, it says that 0 has no meaning, that means there is absence of color, that means you'll have black, and that gives you transparency. And if you have 1 means absolute color. Absolute color means you have the complete knowledge of all the colors, and it will give you the opaque area. That's how you can extract anything out of any video or from an image where you have a foreground area where you want to extract something, and you put that area into particular white region, and the other region which you want to cut it off or you want to separate can be in black, so that that region can give you as transparency for compositing later on. Now, as in for the slide, we were seeing an image which holds the color information with only two colors, black and white. Black gives you 0, white gives you opaque stuff which is equal to 1 again. You can see that image you have, there's a character staying here which is in a background, very different kind of background. Now what you can do in masking is you can separate out that area like this, and that is known as a matte. Now this matte is very fruitful. Now I can have the statue placed in a separate environment. Might be it can be in a spaceship, might be I can put him in a temple, might be I can put him somewhere in the garden. So now this matte is very fruitful for such purposes. Now we were talking about RGB pixels, RGB color pixels also. As in matte only had two values, black and white. Now where does this RGB go? If we only have alpha values or alpha properties, the RGB count also has to be gathered upon. Now alpha means, as we talked, alpha means 1 is opaque, 0 is black. Now RGB is also important because RGB are those color values or those color channels which possess the color information. We can extract with the help of matte, but RGB also needs to be preserved, because if they are not there, you will not be able to see any color in that image. Otherwise the image would turn into black and white. That is again monochromatic image which we were talking about. Matte is the same thing. The monochromatic image which has only two colors, either black or white. Now black gives you transparency and white gives you opaque colors, that is equal to 1. The color of the object is RGB, which you can see in this image. You have three channels. First one is your R channel, the red color. The second channel is your green channel. The third one is your blue channel. And the last channel, that is an auxiliary channel, an extra channel which is available to you, that is your matte, which helps you to give you transparency. Now that alpha can be multiplied by any of the RGB values, which can give you transparency at any moment whenever you require. And that is where we utilize it for compositing. So this elaborates too much about alpha and RGB values. And again, it's very fruitful, and it can be done in any kind of videos. It can be done in any shooting done, any kind of sort of thing. Whatever you shoot from the camera can be again put up into software where you can extract the RGB values separately and the extra values or the auxiliary channel as an alpha separately, and then you compile them together to form into a complete scene. That is what we do in film compositing.
Okay.
Now next one is masking. Basically is a huge utility for compiling things together, but it does give you a problem when you do it in Photoshop, as in for a particular frame, it's fine, but when it's for a video, it gives you a lot of trouble, because you have to do everything completely manually. And manually, whenever anything is being done, it takes a lot of time, and again, a lot of labor is required. Labor as in for a studio, when they're hiring people, they might need more people for masking purposes, because you have to make sure that the object is particularly extracted very neatly with all the edges intact from that background, and so that it can be composited. For the neat look and for the output has to be, if it has to be extremely good, then you want all the manually, if it needs to be done manually, then you might need more people in your studio, and more number of people would cost a lot of money to the client or to the employer. For that purposes, what we do is, there is a technique through which the cost can be reduced, and that cost can be used for putting a chroma studio or for a chroma background in your studio. Manually animating a mask frame by frame, that is we particularly call as an rotoscopy, can be used but can be avoided with the green or a blue screen technique. That green or blue screen technique is basically a chroma keying technique, which we call it as a color keying technique also. That is very utilized and very much used in all the major studios across the country, across the globe, because it's a very vital process. This technique is basically known as chroma keying. Now what happens is, generally people call it as chroma keying, or we call it as color keying, or we might call it as blue screen removal or green screen removal. These all are names provided to one single technique, that is we call it as chroma keying technique. Now what happens to this chroma? This is basically either a blue color or a green color screen which we place, and then we remove that particular blue and green color from the background so that we can incorporate something new. So live action shooting can be composited in any kind of environment which can be seen virtually on the screen afterwards, if we have only that blue screen or the green screen. White and black can also be used, but again white is almost present in our skin tones. Why? Because we have white colors in our eyes, in our teeth, in our nails, and if we extract out white from the background, we'll be removing all our eyes, our teeth, our whatever color white belongs to into our body, that all can be extracted. And for example, if we have black in the background, then the black is also being extracted, as we have black in our hair, we have black in our eyes again, and wherever the facial colors might also be a darker complexion, that the black will remove away all the skin tones also. And that is the reason we have either green screen or blue screen. Now what happens, chroma key basically as in a technique is used for mixing the same process, the compositing process as we've been talking about. It is being used as in for mixing two images together as frames into one single color or one single image by removing that particular color tone. As in for an image, you can see down here is a blue colored environment in front of which there is a person who is standing. This blue current screen is known as the chroma screen, which can be removed later on. Now once we are talking about why do we use this blue and green screen, because first of all, I told you earlier, because it's going to reduce lot of cost when we are doing a chroma shooting, because manually doing masking frame by frame is going to cost you a lot of money. Again, this blue screen removal or this chroma screen were developed in 1930s at RKO Radio Pictures. That is a studio which had used and developed this technique for the very first time, because earlier film compositing was never digital. It was always done manually, and manually when things are being done, it costs a lot of money, patience, time and labor. This is again going to increase the cost for the producer who has been putting up money in the movie. That we don't want it to happen, and as the technology has been rising up, we need to incorporate more of technical stuff, more of advanced techniques, so that our work becomes very easy, and that for purposes blue screen and green screen were developed. This was the first studio which was there in 1930s, RKO Radio Pictures, which had first designed blue screen chroma, which can be now removed very easily, and it's very popular these days. Even smaller kind of studios are also having such kind of suitable studios that are there which can do chroma screen and green screen for anybody, and anybody can go and hire such studios and do the shooting. Now these blue and green screen work easily for us because these colors are easier to extract from any image. Why? Because RGB colors, according to the RGB color space, Red color is the color which is very much there in our skin complexion. If red has to be removed, we'll be easily gone away with all our skin, and then we'll be only having something like Prabhu Deva. We'll be only wearing clothes and all the skin complexion and everything will be gone. Then afterwards, if I use green is very minimum amount of green is present in our complexion, in our skin. That is the reason why, because green is a very minimal amount of green and blue are there in our complexion, in our atmosphere also. Generally, if we are sitting in a studio and we don't have lot of green stuff around us, what we can do is we can have a green screen behind us. It can be shot very easily and the green can be removed. And particularly same goes for blue. But if we are in an exterior environment where you have lot of blue, because generally if you shoot outside, we have lot of area which is covered generally by sky. Now when sky is there, when you remove the blue color, if you put a blue screen in that exterior environment, if you remove the blue color, what happens? You will be losing your sky. So if you don't want it to happen, we'll be using one green screen, which is a very different color. So you'll be saving your skin and you'll be saving your sky if you use a green screen. Similar happens if you're inside some studio and your character needs to wear a green colored uniform or a green colored dress and he's going to be shot on a chroma screen. Then you don't have a facility of using a green screen. When you have to use a blue screen. That is where you make a difference.
Okay.
And for example, you can see in that image which I am going to show you, there is a particular scene which is from a very famous movie, that is Chronicles of Narnia. You can see this scene where all the characters are wearing green colored pants and there is a green colored background in the scene. Where you can see that in the next image, the final image which you have got from the movie, you can see that there are characters, the green pants or the green costumes which the characters are wearing have been removed and they have been replaced by a horse's body. Now these kind of characters are known as centaurs. Centaurs are those characters which have half human and half animal's body. Now you can see the scale and proportion of the characters also. They are very small because all these characters, all the centaur characters, while they have been shot also, they have been shot by standing or sitting on the stands. You can see half the characters are sitting down and half of them have been standing up. Why do we need these ones now? Because the other character is required so that we can have both the legs for the horses. We don't want more characters, but we wanted another horse. That's why we wanted 2 legs. That's why you can see in the image, because you have 4 legs for the horse and the humans only have 2 legs. That's why we incorporated another character here so that we have 4 legs. And again there was a chroma in the complete background so that that background can be removed and you can have a background which we wanted of a palace. Now that palace is very costly. For shooting you need to take permissions from there. For shooting you need to go there, take the permissions, and again what happens, sometimes the permission might be there, sometimes they don't give you the permissions, or maybe the cost is too much for you to hire that studio or for you to hire that particular area. For that purposes what you do is you put a chroma in a studio and then that chroma is very cheap according to the cost which is going to be there. If you do it in a studio, the chroma is as compared to it very cheap. So when you remove that chroma very easily, then what you can do is you can put a matte painting or a background or a still image or maybe a video without the characters, without anybody, and then you put your characters in front of that matte painting or of that scene, and then you do the color correction and finally match moving it. That is how you composite a green screen chroma video shot, and afterwards you put some CG elements. CG elements are again those computer graphics elements or the CG elements which you can add up together, the live shoot and the CG together, and you composite them in a background which might be a matte painting or which might be just a shot which has been taken by a normal camera, and then you fix them up together and they then seem to be a complete scene.
And any specific tip that we can use while doing this chroma?
Yeah, there are a lot of things which you need to cover up while we are doing chroma screen and a green screen or a blue screen, because chroma screen involves a lot of hard work also while doing shooting. You have to take care of particular things. Basically blue and green screen are 2 vital things which we need to understand first before we do the tips and techniques also, because chroma has particular kind of usage, that it needs to be there whenever you want to take out or extract some characters from the foreground and you want to attach them to some background. For that you need a blue and green screen. And as for the purposes, as you've been told, that what happens is we need to extract the blue color or the green color, because that green color or the blue color are not present in our skin tones, so they will easily be able to extract it out. Since the blue and green color are least present in the skin, that's why about 1% or 0.5%, they are just 0.5% grains of green and blue have been found in a skin complexion. That is why there is a reason why we use green and blue screen. Now the process which is involved while we are doing chroma screen is that we shoot our characters or in front of that camera, in front of that blue screen, and we remove it. Now you've been asking me for tips about the chroma removal. For example, if you look at this kind of environment, you have a lot of blue and you have a lot of green also. But the kind of color green screen which they might use in the movie has to be very different while we're doing shooting. Why? Because that green might be there in the grass also, might be there in the environment also, but blue could not have been used because blue is a wider area which gets covered in the sky, and that's why they wore a green suit. Now when the tips and the techniques are being talked about, then what we do is we need to be very much focused upon what kind of tricks we involve while we are doing shooting. For example, clothing. If your characters have lot of blue color in their clothing, or might be there he's wearing, the king is there and he's wearing a blue colored gown, that blue colored gown specifically needs to be, then again we have to understand that if we are going to do chroma, if we want that king's palace is not there in actual, we are going to shoot him on a chroma screen, then we are going to have a image of that background, that palace, and if it is essential for us that we have a blue colored gown for the king, what we need to do is we put a green screen at the backside of that king while doing shooting, so that the blue is not being affected. Because might be if I am the VFX supervisor over there and if I use the blue screen behind the blue gown, what will happen, that blue gown will be removed very easily because it will go away with the blue screen. That is why we need to take care. If the actors, whosoever is performing in front of the blue or green screen, needs to wear a costume which has either blue or green, and again if you replace that color, we need to take care that none of the elements which are required in the scene go or fades off with the replacement. That is very essential, and again it's a very extensive use because it is very important and vital. Why? Because you can easily remove or make things visible or invisible by the choice of when you are doing chroma. For example, there was a very famous shot from the movie Harry Potter where the character is wearing a cloak, and whenever he used to wrap around that cloak, he used to vanish. Now how is it possible for a character to vanish? Or for a very famous movie called Hollow Man, there was a character who is just hollow and you can see only the illusion in the background. So for that purposes, you need to ask that character to wear a particular kind of chroma suit, so that you can extract him out of that background, or you can have him in the background, which makes us very easy to remove him or to add him up, and to make him look transparent, non-visible. That is again up to us what we require out of that character. Now second thing which is very important after clothing is lighting. Lighting is very essential when you are doing chroma, because chroma screen is basically either a cloth or might be it is a paint on the wall. When it is a paint on the wall, what happens actually is that while you are doing chroma, you get images or shadows which get formed because of the presence of light. As in we have 2 or 3, might be we have 3-point light system, or we might have more than 3 lights or 15 lights or 20 lights in the studio. There are various kinds of lights also which again cast light on the character and might be creating some bounce lights on the character. Then what happens, that character face lights up. He might be looking excellent in front of the camera, but the background needs to be tested again, because the background has lot of shadows because of those lights. So they have to be considered also, that the background doesn't have so much of lights, because it again takes a lot of time to replace those shadows. That is why lighting needs to be very much taken care of while we are doing compositing. No shine should be there in the kind of cloth you're using. If you're using a chroma cloth or a blue screen cloth or a green screen cloth, that cloth should have no shine, no luster, because if you have lot of shine, again whenever white light falls on that cloth, particular cloth, then what happens? That shiny part, they will be easily removed or might not be able to be removed, because the white area again is going to be present in your skin, in your eyes, in your facial features also. So that happens that because of that area, the cloth has to have a matte finish. The light doesn't need to fall on that. No shadows should be there. This is the second thing. Third thing which is very important is your camera. Camera should be a bit a higher resolution one. Might be it's a PD cam or might be using a DVC Pro cam. Any kind of camera which can provide you a resolution which is good enough while you're doing shooting. So that is why it is essential that we take care of the camera. It should not produce so much of grains and noise. Okay, so that otherwise when you need to extract, lot of grains are there on your character. Now as in we look into another image, as per we are talking about the techniques and the tricks. Now this character is wearing a blue suit and has a green colored background. Now why are we portraying a character who's wearing a blue suit in front of a green background? There is a reason, because we might be replacing this character with another character which is being done in 3D. That 3D character has been replaced by a real character which was wearing a suit. Now why do we need this character? Because we needed these swords which he's been handling. Now these swords will be replaced afterwards with light streaks, and this character who's been wearing a blue suit now can be easily removed and be replaced by a 3D character in a software, 3D software. So that becomes very easily when you're doing compositing in After Effects. You can easily manage when you take out this character, extract him from the background, this becomes the foreground. Background again we have been using a matte painting, or might be it's a 3D element, or this character which needs to be removed can be replaced with a 3D character which has been done in 3ds Max or Maya. All of these things are then composited or compiled together to make him look or feel as if they were implemented in single scene. That is we call it as the keying technique, completely blended together, and finally we call it as a composited shot. That is how we call it as. Last one is very important, that is your hair. Hair are a big problem while you're doing compositing, because actors' hair are generally, if the actor or the actress is there who has lot of hair flowing because of the air or some problem, that creates a lot of problem while you're doing extraction. So you need to have a chroma which is very vital and very much helps you to take away all the blue and green away from it. So I think that has answered a lot of problem of yours.
Well, as we're short of time, so most probably we'll cover all our topics, and thank you all for joining with us. Thank you.